All right, one last time. Here we go.
One.
And welcome everybody. We are glad you're here at the final virtual roundtable of the Idea Network. We're going to have a great conversation today. We're joined by many of you that have been part of the network for quite a while. Today is going to be an opportunity to really share what God has done in your life and heart and ministry through the Idea Network. We're going to get to that in just a moment. I'm joined beside me by my esteemed colleague and father, birthing person, David.
Birthing person. I'm so glad you're so woke.
Were you part of the process? You didn't.
I did have part of it, but
he was part of it. That's another conversation for another time. But today we are glad to see each and every one of you. We're going to have a great conversation today. Before we open up the conversation, we're going to have a word of prayer and welcome everybody. But I did want to just kind of give a brief welcome to Jason Schuler, who has been our membership director, and throw a little honor his way. He has been the leader of this membership roundtable this last few years. Let's just thank him for all that he's done, especially those members who have been part of it. We are thankful for him, and he just highlighted himself, or Kylie did. We are so thankful for you. We're going to be hearing more from Jason in just a moment. And then Kylie is currently on the phone, making sure that several people who can't find the link are getting there. Why don't we thank Kylie for all that she's done in the network these last few years as well. We are thankful for her. Jeremy Rands is the Vice President of Initiatives of the Idea Network. He's going to open us up in a word of prayer and ask God to bless this conversation.
Father, thank you so much for your calling in our life. Lord, thank you for the friendships and the relationships, Lord, that you have allowed to happen over these last several years. Lord, thank you for this group of ministry leaders today and what you have called them to. Lord, we pray the gospel and the proclamation of the gospel would always remain our focus, would always remain the thing that we are determined to get to this world. And we love you, Jesus. We thank you for salvation. Thank you for saving us. And thank you for calling us into the ministry. And so, Lord, I pray that you would bless this time together. Lord, I pray that through everything, that you are exalted. I pray, Lord, that you are praised and worshiped, and you receive all the glory and the honor for what you've done in this network and what you are doing in the life of each person here. And so, Lord, we lift you up today, and we thank you for being our God. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
We are so glad to have each and every one of you here today. We're going to go ahead and open it up by kind of walking you through the process of what this last meeting will be. We're really breaking it down into three parts. The first part is going to be called Let's Get Real. And we want to talk about what's actually happening, answer some questions that I've been receiving via email, text message, and phone call multiple times. I know Jeremy and Kylie have as well, probably Jason. Let's get real. We're going to be answering the question of like, what's really happening and why is it really happening? And under the let's get real, I'm going to throw it to you. I want you yourself to be able to speak into this. I want you yourself to be able to say, I have a question. I have a problem. I have an issue with this. And we're going to get to that in a moment. Second part that we're going to talk through is best memories. This is where we want you to share. What was your first event? Who was it that you met? What were the greatest ideas that you brought away that truly helped you in life and ministry? So we're going to get into best memories. And then from there, lastly, we're going to talk about your next. And I'm going to explain more about that in just a moment. Now, before I throw it to you and talk about let's get real, let's first begin with me getting real. I don't know if I've tried to express this over the years, but one of the things that I attempt to do in my life and ministry, not only locally, but also my ministry with my family and my ministry with the Idea Network, has been to be authentic and genuine and real. It's my desire. I think I've shown that. I think I've proved that over the last 20 years 10 years with the Idea Network, and hopefully for another 20 if the Lord gives it to me, 20 or 30 or 40. I want to remain authentic and real. And so, though there have been many questions where people have called me and said, Josh, okay, I know, tell me, but what's really going on? Let me be as real as I possibly can. What's really going on with me is focus. I have to be focused on what? On my Father's business. Now, I've been given perhaps the greatest father that mankind has ever been given. This man, awkward.
Let's talk about the Father.
Well, a great father.
Our Father.
Well, I'm going to transition to that.
Okay.
Because the greatest thing this father ever did to me was introduce me to the Father. He is a hero to me, but my father is the great hero. And he taught me to be about my Father's business. And my Father's business has been different assignments at different times. One of the things I truly feel the Father led me to do through the Holy Spirit was to start the Idea Days and Idea Summit, Idea Network, and all of that. But the Father really led through his Holy Spirit to begin to move away from that so that I can focus upon the Father's business of the local church. Genuinely, over the last 6 months, well, last year or so, and especially the last 6 months, I've had to decide if my ministry right now needs to maintain focus on a local church ministry or national ministry of Idea Network. And I had to pray and ask God, do you want me to move more full-time into this? Or do you want me to stay local? I did not believe I could do both. So for me, let's get real. It begins with that statement. I really, truly had to, why am I stepping back? Focus. That's the real reason. That, and I've been approached by the FBI. They want to use my skills and talents as a spy to help. But I hope nobody shares that truth with anybody because I'll be undercover.
Josh, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
When we started Idea Network, when the whole thing was started, the idea was to get pastors in local areas together to just discuss ideas. And we did that. We've done that locally, and then that expanded to regionally, and then that expanded to nationally. And we've seen that happen. But the idea, the concept of getting together with pastors locally and enjoying the fellowship and encouraging one another is still a great idea. It's just that it's implanted in people.
Yeah.
It's already there. And as we discuss this, you said, and I agree with this, it's happening and it doesn't need us doing this anymore.
Yeah, very, very much so. The original Idea Day started from two concepts. Number one, Dad had a group of pastors that used to get together when I was an intern at Liberty from Las Vegas, and they would get together, have breakfast, and talk. The other idea came from Steve Miller when Steve Miller went to Ironwood, and he went to a roundtable of youth pastors, and he came back and he's like, man, we should do that with like senior pastors, not just youth pastors. And I'm like, that is a great idea. And he's like, we could call it Idea Day. I don't know if that's exactly how the story went, but something like that. So that concept is still valid. And that's actually previewing the third part that we'll be talking about today.
Stop. Didn't mean to jump in.
No, that's okay. See, we didn't preview that part either. So when it comes to getting real, I do want to hear from you. The questions that I've been asked are, why am I stepping back? Focus. What am I moving to? Josh, what are you going to be doing next? And the answer to that question is a 5-year break. I'm really moved by this concept that somebody posted recently in the Facebook group, and that is Tim Keller didn't start writing until about 20 years before his death. And somehow I found myself, probably because I love to share my opinion, with a national voice far earlier than probably I should share a national voice, to be blunt. And I'd really like to step back from all these things. It's not like I'm moving from the Idea Network to focus in some other grand network. I mean, I'm involved with ABWE, my missions organization. I love Send Network for church planting here in Nevada. But when it comes to doing next, I've got no ministry I'm moving to nationally. This was my ministry. I'm focused locally. So I keep getting that question. Why am I stepping back? Focus. What are you moving to? 5-year break. I want to break away from national scene. And then focus locally. And then lastly, why not pass the torch to somebody else? I've had that conversation quite a bit. And some of you might be asking that question, why not? Why not pass it to somebody else? And the answer to that question is we are. And I'm going to be talking about that at the end of the conversation today. But to get real, it's not just me getting real. Maybe one of you might want to jump in and say, no, I want to address that answer. Or I want to address that question. I want to poke at that a little bit or add to that conversation. Under this first part, not memories, that first part, let's get real. If that's you today, would you raise your hand or just jump in and say, hey, Josh, we'll highlight you. And oh, Dad's phone's going off. We'll highlight you and we'll let you speak into this part. Let's get real. Like, this is an authentic group. Any thoughts that somebody'd like to share at this time related to that? I'll explain what type of thoughts while Jason keeps an eye for hands. There was a comment in one of the Facebook groups that I thought was really good. And the question was very honest. The question was, I don't see that this really makes any sense at all. Why are we doing this? That's a really authentic, genuine, honest question that allowed me to really respond publicly. And that was really helpful. I forget who put it now, but that person really helped us in the Facebook group. Maybe there's somebody else here that might say, I do have further questions. And if there's not, we're going to jump into the second part of our conversation today, memories and celebration. Anybody want to jump in and say, hey, yeah, I do have some thoughts that I'd like to share.
Hey, Josh, I have a question. It's Justin Elwell.
Yeah, Justin, let's highlight Justin.
Just real quick, one of the things that I just had in my own mind on thinking is the content. Some of the things like the weekly roundtables, I know I have gone back like multiple times to rewatch or when it's more applicable. So one of the things that I'm wondering in this are, I know we're keeping some of the things like the Facebook group, but are we keeping any of the content that can be passed around and shared and stuff like that from all of these great speakers we've had?
That's an absolutely excellent question. There is, of course, the Facebook group that will continue under the leadership of Thomas Osterkamp and myself. Thank God for Thomas, such a great guy. What a positive spirit. Secondly, yes, our podcast will continue and all of those podcast episodes will remain relevant and live. And then thirdly, we've been having conversation with Caleb Yoder about putting all of the roundtables onto the YouTube page. If you're not following the YouTube page, that's the same YouTube channel that we posted the announcement about the Idea Network closure. So we believe that we're able to we believe at this point, without any promises, that we're going to be able to maintain a lot of that content from the weekly roundtables and post it there. We did not want to do that previous because that content was exclusive to members. And that's one of the reasons why members were paying for membership. And we did not want to shortchange those who had invested in the network in that way, but we're free to do that at this point. Great question, Justin. That's greatly appreciated. Any other questions or comments or thoughts like that?
Hey, Josh, we've got HL Media Design just messaged and said they've got a question as well. So if you guys want to unmute and ask your question.
Hey guys, this is Heath Lowry here. I'm signed in with my business account, so that's why it shows up that way. Hey man, so one of the questions that I had was, you had kind of mentioned to me personally, maybe some other options as far as conferences and things like that, that would be a good resource to go to. And I think it would be awesome, especially in our Facebook group, to maybe share some of those. Because for me personally, and I told Josh, my first time meeting Josh was at Idea Summit, otherwise known as ICE Summit in Dallas. And, it was one of those things where I told Josh, I feel like I found my people, right? It was my first Idea Network event and my first time meeting many of you outside of the Facebook group, but I felt like I finally found my people. And so for me, that was huge to be able to feel like I found a group of people that were on the same path and had a lot of the same ideologies that I hold to and that I found recently. And so continuing to be able to have places where I can go and to receive encouragement, to receive good resources, as well as the fellowship with people who are like-minded is going to be huge for me personally. Because that was the first time in several years that I felt like I had that. was at the Idea Summit. So I guess my question / maybe suggestion would be, can you share with us maybe some ideas now, and then also, maybe posting some links, and anyone that has information like that, not just Josh, but anybody that can share info would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, man, Heath, thank you so much for bringing that up. You too are previewing where we're going to go at the end of this conversation. And we're going to talk about what's next and who's next, and where would we point our finger to and say, man, you got to check that out. I'll say two things. Number one, we're going to talk about it at the end. And then number two, I'm going to remain active on social media and in the Facebook group, and really free, even more free than I've ever been, because I'm not leading the network, to say, hey, I'm going over to this conference. Hey, I'm checking out this thing. And just because I'm doing it doesn't mean it's an endorsement, obviously, but I'm going to check it out. And there have been certain conferences that I've been to that really do feel very similar to the same feeling of Idea Network. I was at a group with about 35 pastors last night here in Las Vegas. And that group, I looked at Heather, I said, this feels, now it's not true maybe in every state, but that feels like Idea Network. And you're going to find that, and I'm going to help you find some of those, but it may be different related to context. There are regional networks, there are national networks. Yeah, well, I think that conversation should continue, especially in the Facebook group. And some of you, for example, go to things like Sing. I can't wait to go to Sing and find out about it. And once you go, put it in there. And it would be really good, like Keith said, to say, this conference is great, and it reminds me of the Idea Network in this way. Very good question, Matt. You're muted.
I'm still on mute. There we go. I'm off mute. Okay. So yeah, for me, it was, we just got off the mission field 3 years ago. You and I, Josh, we talked, and got back from the mission field and just kind of felt like, we don't belong in any group anymore. We don't fit in any group anymore. And just like that fellow was just saying, got involved in what was going on with the Idea Network, got to go to Chicago last year, and definitely felt like found my tribe. Going forward, though,
listen to you.
I guess Josh doesn't want to listen to me. Wow.
Sorry about that.
So, and maybe you're going to hit this, I guess. So if you're going to hit this, tell me, we'll hit it. But going forward, the thing about the group was you had this camaraderie of people that you knew, if we get together or we communicate, there is just that synergy, because we're in line. We're not having to worry about, is this guy off on the deep end or is this guy off on this deep end? But there was a lot of balance there. And a lot of it had, circled around the name Idea Network. When we talked about Idea Network, even here in Montana, where I'm at, I found guys who had already heard about it, and they were interested in coming to Idea Nights and different things. Going forward, is there something where, I don't know, where the logo is usable going forward, where there's something where we can say, hey, this is going to be like this, because we're working on developing a similar Idea type network here in Montana. So I don't know, just how do you recommend that going forward? And again, maybe you're going to deal with that at the end.
Thanks, Matt. No, it is a question that I've received multiple times, and the answer is going to be dealt with at the end. I will be addressing that directly. It's a great question. And I know it's a great question simply because a lot of people are asking. So I'll be talking about that. Thanks, Matt. I appreciate that. It validates where I want to go with the conversation. Very good. Another individual that I might not answer their question like I ignored Matt's. I think some people are like, well, if you're going to answer all the questions at the end, why do I ask a question now? So maybe we can hold off on that. I'd love to shift to that second part of the conversation then. Best memories. 10 years of the Idea Network have given us some of the greatest memories that we've had in conferences, in small events like the Idea Nights, in the original Idea Days, and in the massive summits, even the ICE Summit of 2023. Some great memories, but it's not just great memories. it's also great friends, people we've met, developed relationships with that will continue all the way through. And I'd love for you to share some of those memories, first events, people that you've met, or specific ideas that you came away with that would say, man, this is revolutionary for me. I'll tell you 2 ideas for me. So I'll kick it off, and then I want to throw it to Jason Schuler and hear his. 2 for me. Number 1, I'll never forget the moment Jonathan Blankenship said at an idea day, probably the second idea day ever here in Las Vegas. He said, you know what I like to do? I like to open up my afternoons for coffee to sit one-on-one with members of our church who just want to grab a cup of coffee. And he said, so I will station myself at a coffee shop, and for 1 hour at a time, I'll just have them come in and I'll talk to them there. And I'm like, that is a great idea. And so I marked it down. This is the first time in 8 years I've given him credit for my Fridays with the Pastor coffee appointments. But man, that changed my life, changed my ministry. And now I do every single Friday doing just that. The last idea, or that was probably one of the first. The most recent idea I received was at our last idea night, just in last September. There's a local church pastor who is a leader in the Nevada Baptist Convention. He's an SBC guy that came, and his name is Steve. And Steve gave a lesson, because we had a special speaker. He gave a lesson about being a personal soul winner. And it was an idea as much as an encouragement to get back to personal evangelism. And I was trained to be a personal evangelist by this man. But as I became a pastor, I got wrapped up in a lot of things. And that made a real big impact on me. And I made a decision to adjust my weekly coffee appointments to focus specifically on people who need to get saved. And that was back in September. And man, God has just opened the floodgates when it comes to personal evangelistic opportunities, because I changed my schedule. So those were 2 ideas that shaped my life in ministry, the first idea and the last idea. What about you? What were some ideas or friendships or memories that you made along the way? I'm going to throw it to Jason. Jason, what about you?
So when I think about the Idea Network, for me, Josh gave me a call back in the end of 2019 and invited me to come to the Idea Network Summit in Las Vegas. And I thought, man, this is awesome. Las Vegas, even in January, is going to be really warm and nice. And it snowed there, and it was rainy the whole time. And it was terrible weather, but a really good conference. We called that the COVID Factory because it was kind of on the heels of COVID back when that existed. And we were all going to get it, and we knew it, and we didn't care. And I loved events. I think the events were something that sticks out most to me. The one in Vegas, the members only one in San Antonio, Chicago, Tampa, the one in Dallas, the Idea Nights, all those stick out. And then the friendships and the relationships. Josh, I've really enjoyed getting to know you, and then getting to work side by side with you and Kylie and Jeremy and the crew. That's really been a lot of fun for me. I'm gonna miss some of the friendships. It's been great to see guys that are kind of my age in ministry, like an Andrew Peters, and getting to know guys like that. And you've got guys that have been doing it for 40 and 50 years, like Dennis Fountain is on here. I see him. He's been doing it for a long time. Just kind of the older guys there in the network, but it's been great to get to know people. I think what I'll miss, I won't miss it initially, but I'll miss it in time, is the virtual roundtables. Every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, I'm not going to know what to do. And that's going to be really nice for the next few weeks. And then after a while, it's going to get kind of sad. And so I have enjoyed the relationships and the events in this network, and getting to know many of you. And I think that's what I would say. Those are kind of my favorite memories.
How many of you guys came to the COVID Factory? I love that all of our summits have have like a tagline. You remember the COVID? Yeah. Everybody went home, got sick. It was a joy.
Freezing in Vegas.
It was a joy. So next, who else would like to jump in here? Now it's free for all. Hunter, unmute yourself.
Hey guys, my name is Hunter Whitten, lead pastor of Beacon Baptist Church in Halton City, Texas. This is not necessarily a great memory, but for those of us who missed the Arctic Summit, I was 45 minutes away, couldn't get out of my neighborhood. I think all of us should draw numbers, and whoever's number you pick should be reimbursed for having to miss the summit, because it was devastating being so close but couldn't make it. So just thought I'd throw that out there.
I'm really glad you mentioned that, because my dad said before we got on, he said, anybody that mentions reimbursement, he'll personally send a check. So Hunter, expect that check from Dave Tice.
Would you please ask God for forgiveness right now? Let's pray. Let's pray.
It's a lie. It's a lie. It's a lie. Josh Hargis, what's up, buddy?
Hey guys, I've been around for a while. I was a nobody and a nothing in a little town trying to figure out how to pastor a small little country church 9 years ago when I met the network, and back before there was a network and it was just idea days. I want to say probably the most impactful thing for me was the first one I went to was in Vegas. We were in the old warehouse still. We had the little wooden blocks that we had on the table, if you remember those.
Yep.
And it was the first one I went to, but I had never been around a group, especially a group of Baptists, that just wanted to talk about how to be better at reaching people with the gospel. That was the biggest encouragement I think I had ever received. I went home and went back to that little church and just really spent a lot of time praying and looking over pages of notes that I took that first day and contemplating my relationship with all the pastors I grew up knowing, because they had never encouraged me to be effective with the ministry. It was always a list, like a checklist of what you're doing, and then you had to tell what size of church you had or how long you'd been there whenever you'd go to meet somebody. But going to an idea day, it was just simply how to get better at what we're doing. And I felt like, now I said this in the Facebook message, in the Facebook group earlier this week or last week, I felt like everybody there was everybody I had been missing in my life. And I instantly thought, these are my friends. Every one of these guys are my friends. Whether they know it or not, they have become my friend. And I even went to other pastors' fellowships in our area, and I would talk about friends that I had never actually met or really spoken to, but they were my friends because I had seen them at an idea day. But the encouragement was what was great. We were, for the first time, I was able to take a couple of staff members to Chicago last year, and they walked away extremely encouraged because they realized that we're not alone. In our area, we don't have a whole lot of churches that are really doing a good job. A lot of them, especially during COVID, was really just trying to keep the doors open and keep a paycheck. And that's kind of what, as we were bringing staff on and had some volunteer staff and we were interacting with some other churches, that was their opinion. There is that we're the only ones that care about the community. No one else cares but us. And we kind of felt isolated. And we went to Chicago, and on the way home, they realized that we are just one church among many churches that are trying to reach the world with the gospel. And so it almost like lit a fire that we're not alone, and they got to be a part of that. And so I think my discouragement is not necessary for myself, because I feel like I have received so much from the network, and I'm able to be a contributor with our local pastors in our area and share with them the things I have learned. But it's the people that we're raising up in our church that are coming into ministry, surrendering the ministry. That's what discourages me, because I wanted them to have this network, something that they could jump into, have that camaraderie, have that open line of communication, in which, in a lot of ways you have been right. It's happening already. Our student ministry guy has already got a coffee appointment with another student ministry guy from this network, just not because of an idea day, but just because of the network. And, just, hey, go call this guy and see if you can get with him. And it worked out. And so, but that's what I wanted to say.
Josh, I really appreciate the spirit behind everything that you stated. Anybody who knows the history of this brief history of this network knows that not only would the network not be around without Stephen Miller, but the tone and the concept itself would have been completely different. The idea, Steve, I'd love you to jump in, and we just want to show you some honor. The idea itself not only came from Steve, but the idea of keeping it simplified 5 topics in a roundtable. Let's just talk, and let's not deal with the drama of this issue or that issue or making a statement about this or that or the other. Let's just talk about assimilating people at a church. Let's just talk about out of the box evangelism idea. Let's just talk about worship. Let's start a podcast. There is no Idea Network without Stephen Miller. Steve, what's some of the memories that flood back from those early days that you're thinking of right now?
Yeah, there's a lot of memories. So the original was we were driving in a car, and we had just come, Josh and myself and a couple guys had just come from something that looked like Idea Day, but was far from it. And we were sort of like frustrated because we had driven a long way and it just wasn't. And we're like, we just need to do something like that, but nothing like that. And so I remember sitting in the car and we're like, we just need a day like we can share ideas. And we're like, well, what do you want to call it? We're like, I don't know, like Idea Day or something, right? We're like, perfect, we'll go with that. So I remember those early days, we really never had any intention of trying to build anything. Matter of fact, I remember conversations where we were like, well, we better make it free because if we charge anything, no one's going to come. So let's not charge anything. Let's buy lunch and maybe we can get a few people that might consider to come. And the spirit of that first one really was an indicator that there is a great need for this. There was a need for pastors to come together and not feel like there was an agenda or they had to quantify every answer or they were a big name or not a big name. And so some very small details went into that. For example, the Roundtable was a part of the idea of there's no big pastors here. There's just ministers. Another thing we did was we got the name badges, and I think it's still the same to this day, maybe, but we didn't put doctor, we didn't put pastor.
Yeah,
you
remember talking specifically about him? We're like, what are we going to put with Dad? And we're like, we can just put first names for everybody.
We're just going to put Dave. I think we might have considered like Dr. Dave or something, but then we're like, no he's got to sort of flow into it.
I was a little offended, but
he was a good sport about it. He was a good sport about it. And we wanted to show honor. Obviously, we wanted to show honor, but it was Dave. And we made a decision early on. We said, it doesn't matter who comes. They're just going to be their first name. And I remember we were so skeptical about it that we would not even ask people to speak until after they registered to come. So we were like, hey, we saw that you registered. Do you want to do a session? That way we don't have to give you a love offering and pay for any of your expenses because you're already planning on coming, right? And we really had a great group in that first time of just guys that just sort of pioneered that. And that's where the idea of there's no agendas, just ideas. And honestly, it took a while because I think we were the group that was coming, there was that sort of flinch factor to the point where we started to, every Idea Day roundtable, we would spend the first 10 minutes, walking through like the ground rules. So we would say like, okay, you don't need to quantify every answer. We would have guys, they'd be like, I believe in small groups. I'm not saying I don't believe the Bible, right? And we were like, no, you don't have to do that here. Like you just tell us what you think about small groups and we're fine. And that was I think that really helped set the tone, Josh, for sort of what has become that. And that's been the spirit of it. And it's grown. I remember my favorite memory of Idea Day was we had one in Vegas and it was growing. And of course, when stuff's growing and things are happening, Josh is excited about that. And he's a visionary guy. And so I remember the day he came into the office and he literally said this. He opens the door, he goes, I want one in the Midwest. And he walked out. That's all he said. I want one in the Midwest. And so we got to work and we found our buddy Kirk Kirkland, and we did Idea Day Midwest with 130 guys in a very sketchy part of Cincinnati in the upstairs of a Family Dollar. And literally you had to go through, like, I think you had to go through the Family Dollar to get to the church. And there was a spirit there. It was just a spirit of guys coming together and understanding they can just be themselves. They don't have to put on, act out. They could just let their guard down, and God really blessed that. And I just remember many conversations. I remember the conversation we had about women. That was sort of it's funny to think about that now, but that was sort of a big topic. I remember we had a separate idea day within the day for women, the first one. And then we looked at each other like, this is stupid. And so we brought together and we had women, and they were great contributors, and it was awesome. And then obviously from there, God took it in places we never thought possible. And I'm very thankful for all of that. I'm thankful for the memories. I'm thankful for Josh giving me the opportunity to just develop something and be a part of it. And I'm sad. I mean, I know my honest feeling. I'm sad to see it. I don't know what's going to happen. Josh is keeping us in suspense here, but I'm sad to see it shift away from what it is right now. But I understand there's context to that and things like this, but a lot of good memories.
That's awesome. Hey, Josh, real quick, we have some that have put in the chat that are really good too. If you guys want to direct your attention to the chat, and then we got to get to some of these hands. More hands have been raised than a lot of Baptist churches see in a year. So we got to get on some of these. Thomas Osterkamp was up here first, I think, if you want to transition to him.
Yeah. This was in the poll in the chat in the group earlier. Somebody said something about the state of where you were when you found the network, and I think I was the only one who checked. I was ready to be done. We were basically on an island where we were in Iowa. We were too liberal for this half, and we were too conservative for this half, and it just felt like, man, there's nobody. Why isn't there any just normal people who love Jesus and just want to reach people without all the craziness? And I was really ready to be done. And my friend Ryan Livingston said, hey, let's go check out this Idea Day thing in Las Vegas. And so we went and brought my wife, and he brought his wife, and it was just walking in there and sensing the spirit and seeing people who just loved each other, that they weren't there to judge each other, tear each other down, or any of that stuff. It was just, hey, you're on my team. You're my people. You're serving Jesus. And to find that encouragement, and it really did give me the breath of fresh air and the strength to step out and just be who God made me to be, to serve him the way that he wants me to serve him. And, I just wanted to say to everybody who's had a part in it from the very beginning up to the end, I really believe everything that God uses me to do in this life is somewhat contributed to all of you who had a part in it. So I just wanted to say thank you.
We love you, Thomas, and I'm thankful for your friendship. Looking forward to many years to come. James Kephart.
Yeah, thanks. So thinking about this, very first event that I went to was Idea Night. And I think it was the first year you had Idea Night. And I went to Aaron Carpenter, who's hosting it over in the Seattle area. And so we drove over from Yakima, and I brought some people that didn't come from that background. And so probably 2014 is when I stepped out of ministry. I stepped out of the IFB, and 2017 I got back into ministry, but it wasn't in the IFB. And so I was kind of nervous going to this event, thinking, oh man, it's going to be a bunch of IFB guys. I didn't know much about the Idea Network at that time. But I got there and I realized it's just a bunch of guys that they want to stick to the mission, right? We know culture is going to change and the methods are going to change. I kind of think of the one Idea Day event where we did that song, or you did the history of music, the choir in Las Vegas, and they sang all the way going back to like the 1600s and then all the way up to where we are now. And it just showed that like the method has changed, culture has changed, but the mission has stayed the same, you know. And I found that I found a tribe, right, where I felt like I belonged. And some of the things that Thomas Osterkamp said really resonate with me as well, you know, is trying to find that niche that you belong in. But I think what it's also helped me to do is I had this, I guess, adversity towards the IFB, you know, because I stepped out when it wasn't cool a long time ago, and so I was kind of hesitant towards a lot of those guys. But I found that there's a whole lot of guys in there also that are just mission minded, and that we're all on the same team trying to reach people for Jesus. And so it expanded my horizon of the people that I can work together for with the gospel. And just thinking of a few people that really had an impact on me, I think Dennis Fountain, one of them. You know, that first Idea Day in Vegas that I went to, he knew me from when we were teenagers, and was really a help. Jeremy Rands, when I was going through a difficult time, I got to talk with him, and then Josh Tyson this last year, just through some of the things we've got to talk through. I would say this has had a huge impact on me and my ministry. So thank you guys.
Thank you, James, for sharing. Ryan Livingston.
Yeah, I'll be real quick. I just wanted to say the first couple of years, you would jump on real quick and have just like a brief, like a 5-minute preview of what was happening at Idea Day. And I remember watching those in my office and thinking, every time this group gets together, I want to be there. And so that was kind of the first introduction I had, was those little 5-minute Facebook Live clips. And I thought, man, that's the kind of event that I want. I want an event where ideas can be shared, and it's not about pride and arrogance and all that nonsense, but just guys that you think will be on the same team as you. And I remember sitting there listening to those Facebook Lives, and I think it was the first year Kylie was there, and you just kind of jumped on, and then you cut it off after like 5 minutes. And I was so ticked. I was like, I should have been there. You know, I should have been out there. I should have seen what was going on. And I determined I wasn't going to miss any at that point. And I think the highlight for me was really the Idea members only event we did in San Antonio. That was just a blast. You know, that was just one of those highlight trips that I'll never forget in ministry.
Thanks, Ryan. Adam.
So I was at the frozen tundra of Las Vegas. Couldn't believe that it was warmer in South Carolina than it was in Vegas those 2 or 3 days that I was there. Snow on the rooftops. I couldn't believe it. But I knew Josh Tice. I was a summer missionary with Dr. Tice there, and I'm so thankful still for many years of still an influence that this family. So I knew of Josh and I knew about Idea Network, but I didn't know where in the world I was going. I was in a very tough period in 2021. And so I just looked at my wife. I said, okay, this is what I want for Christmas. I said, I need to go to this Idea Summit. And so I went to the Idea Summit. And when Josh brought up the membership only, I said, this is what I need. I knew that God was transitioning me into potential going to be a full-time pastor. And I remember sitting in Tommy Thompson's breakout session that day. And Tommy Thompson talked about, you know, taking that step of faith. If where God is leading you to go into full-time ministry, to go and to be that senior pastor, it just encouraged me to take that step of faith. And so through this network, I found out Nick Carnes was 2 hours away from me. And so Nick has been a great friend. Now we're 2 hours away still, because in the last year I'm transitioned to that role as a senior pastor in Georgia, and between hit conversations with Nick, Thomas, even Stephen Miller has been an encouragement to me every time he did one of our roundtables, and I'm looking forward. My wife's family lives up in that area of Virginia, and I'm looking forward to one day getting up there and going to see what God has done at Heritage Baptist Church. I look forward to doing that one day. And Philip Jones, phone conversations that I had in that process of transitioning to ministry has just been awesome. And so I thank God for the Idea Network. Nick and I have already talked about possibly doing a similar roundtable here, like an Idea Night type here in our area here in Georgia, and having Nick come and being part of that. So I'm thankful that these type of things will continue on. It's taught me so much, and I'm excited about what God is continuing to do. I appreciate so much the leadership from you, Josh, Kylie, Jason, Jeremy, all of it. It's been awesome, and I look forward to keeping with me and you guys.
Thank you so much, Adam, for sharing. We're going to go to Tony next, if you'll prepare to unmute. So some people are asking about the schedule for today's meeting. For the next 10 minutes, we're going to continue with testimony time. Then I'm going to take about 15 minutes to talk about what's next. And then we're going to come back to testimony time for whoever would like to stick around. So if you're trying to schedule out, I want to know what's going on next. And what's that third part of the conversation, Josh? In 10 minutes, we're going to jump into that, and we'll talk for about 10 or 15 and then go back to testimonies. And I'm going to stick around as long as anybody'd like to stick around. But I know some of you are on a tight schedule. Tony.
Yeah, our first one as a staff, we went to in Cincinnati, and it was epic. It was awesome. And just like everybody else, we found our tribe, and we had the boxes. I still have my box that I remember from being part of that. It was awesome. But I've got to say, probably one of my greatest memories, and we've been to the summits, I did the mastermind, all those different things, but you guys blew me away when we were in Texas. And in the one service, you started talking about people struggling. You asked them to stand. And I'm thinking, people aren't just going to stand. And people started standing up, and you had people walk around, and we just stopped everything just to pray over people struggling in ministry. No schedule. It didn't matter what was next. It was just for like a half hour, just crying and praying over each other. And that was one of the most powerful things I've ever been part of. And then at the summits, being able to worship with my staff and the spirit, the unity of being in that room with all of you guys, because we don't get to do that at church. We're running, we're serving, and coming to the summit, being able to do that with my church staff was amazing. So I could go on, but it definitely has had a lasting impact on not only me, but my whole church staff. And I'm going to miss this a lot.
We love you, Tony. And if one of the main reasons why God brought us all together is so that we can continue to stay in prayer together for Logan. We love him. We love you. We believe by faith for his future and his health. And we
Thank you. Love you guys.
Lysandra.
So our first idea event was 2019, I believe, when Ryan Livingston was like, I'm going to this conference, you guys want to come? And we just wanted to get out of Iowa because of the ice and snow. So we were like, yeah, we'll go to Vegas in January. Sounds great. And we were just blown away as soon as we walked into the room. We knew that this was different and that it was fantastic. And we knew we were going to come to every event. We were like, it doesn't matter. We're going to be there like every time. And we have been since then. I loved that women were there and I felt represented. And I remember when Josh, you and Heather walked on stage and welcomed everyone. And I was like, oh my gosh, they have a woman talking on the stage. She has a microphone. Like, what is this thing? Like, what is this? And it was just beautiful. Like, it was so beautiful to see how you two work together. And that had a big impact on me. The worship night, this is so funny because I didn't even think about this until this moment. In worship that night at the summit was the first time I have ever raised my hands in worshiping God, because all the lights were off and I was like, nobody can see me. I'm just going to raise my hand. And all of a sudden I was like, okay, this is how you worship God for real. And it was so fantastic. And of course, now my husband has to watch out or I will just slap him in the face during worship. But you guys changed so much about how I viewed ministry and even just my personal relationship with God. Like, it was okay to be sincere and passionate. It wasn't wrong. Blake Hunt's assimilation, his session on assimilation was the first one that I was in. And my husband and I, we decided we were going to split up and then share notes later so we could leave with, having the most ideas. And the idea that changed our ministry was he talked about how he was the church host and he would get up there and welcome people and then later text them and everything. So on the way home, I told Thomas, I was like, Thomas, this is such a great idea. We need to have a church host. And this is what it is. And this is how it works. And he goes, awesome. You're the church host. You're going to do that tomorrow. And I was like, no, I can't. I can't do that because women had never been on the stage in our church. They had never, even special music was done on the floor by the piano, And so he said that was what I was going to do. And from then on, I started welcoming the church. I started doing announcements and praying to open service. And the women of our church were so happy. They loved it and it went over well. And of course, now we are such a team in ministry and it's awesome. But we kind of felt like we had the permission to change the method because of Idea Network. I'm trying to go really fast because I know that everybody else wants to talk too. I absolutely loved being the blog manager. That was amazing and absolutely terrifying because I can barely even turn on my computer. But Kylie, you were so gentle and loving to train me and to teach me even when I didn't know how to open a new window. She was like, open a new window. And I was like, I don't know how to do that. And she walked me through everything and was so sweet. And I love her. And I'm so thankful for Kylie. I'm so thankful for Josh and Heather and Jeremy and Michelle. I pray for you guys every day. I'm going to keep praying for you every day because I know this transition is going to be hard. There's going to be a lot of emotions attached. We are all going to miss this so much, but we are so grateful and so thankful for the opportunity we've had. And I'm done.
Thank you, Lysandra. Nick Carnes.
Yeah, so my first experience with Idea Network, I never had heard anything about Idea Network, was the summit in 2021. I had heard about it through the RFP podcast. They were doing a live, broadcast there and a meetup. And so this was on the tail end. I was actually starting, it was actually at the beginning of a 7-week sabbatical. I was 11 years church plant, bivocational for 6 of those years, portable for 8 years, had just gotten to a building, 2020 hit with COVID, dealing with all of that, and really got with my elders and just said, I need a break. So I started a 7-week sabbatical. Get there, know no one. There's this guy up on stage talking about Disney, and I'm like, what is this about? Very animated, like a Disney musical. Not sure what I got myself into, but talking about the membership, and little did I know, I just kind of, by hearing what it was about, signed up for it. And I didn't know that actually the next 2 years of my ministry was going to be the worst that I have ever experienced. And so we essentially experienced a slow church split over the last couple of years because of some internal things. And so the friendships that were developed, I looked forward to every Tuesday roundtable. It was a breath of fresh air. A lot of it was renewing things that I had been taught or learned over the years, but it was a refreshment just to be able to hang out with like-minded people in ministry, those who were experiencing similar things or had experienced similar things. It was just an escape. My favorite event was San Antonio because I knew people then. But it was also cool to be able to actually hang out in person. I know the highlight for my wife and I were getting to meet and hang out with Chris and Holly Rule, and then Dale and Ashley Curdy. I see Ashley on here. You can let Dale and Chris know we've missed having them on here. But then Tampa was great. I got to bring one of my staff members, Corell. He's on here to that. When I was in Dallas, I got to go hang out with Robbie Green. He was so gracious to spend the day with me. He bought me lunch. So if you're ever in Dallas, look him up. He'll buy you lunch. What great ministry he's doing there. That was so inspirational. And so I could go down the line. Adam Bray has become one of my best friends. We're very close, so we talk a lot. I mimic him in saying every time Stephen Miller shared, it was encouraging. First thing Stephen asked me when we talked on the phone was if I could get him Masters tickets. No, but if I could, because of the content he shared,
he would be the first person that I gave them to. So I am so grateful, not only for the leadership of Josh in putting this together, but also recognizing when something needs to change, because we deal with that. That's what this whole thing's been about. The boldness and the courage to take that step. But I'm also excited about the future and the fact that we get to take this now and be friends with people locally, regionally. It doesn't have to stop here, but we get to take it beyond what we have experienced. And now we've gotten a little bit of a taste and an idea that we can take to our local context, and we can help other people who know nothing about the Idea Network. And so I'm excited about it. Thank you so much for letting me be a part of it as an outsider, and now I'm an insider, and I love it. And I thank you for all the friendships, for all those that I have gotten to meet and talk to on the phone. So I'm grateful.
Thank you, Nick. We're gonna get to AJ, BMAC. We're gonna get to Heath and Michael and Justin and Mike and Joseph and Matt and Ashley. We're gonna get to all of you. Kylie's gonna share, and then we're gonna go into that third part of our conversation, and that is that we're titling "What's Next." Kylie.
Hi, I just wanted to say how much I've appreciated all of you, and I was fine on this until Thomas Osterkamp spoke, and of course he had to bring the emotion that I was doing a good job of keeping back until then. But this network has been revolutionary in so many ways. One thing that Lysandra mentioned that I have always resonated with and appreciated about Idea Network is its respect for women. And we weren't outsiders, and I kind of laughed when Stephen Miller mentioned that the original one had a separate, and I was like, I actually didn't even know that. I'm very glad you very quickly came to bring us all in the same room. One thing that has always really struck me about studying religions in general is that Christianity is the only religion that honors women. It's the only one. In every other religion, there is a debasement of women, and they are seen as less than. And in the Bible, and we see Christ exemplifying an honor and a respect for women. And so that's why it was always so sad to me when I would see churches or Christians kind of following the world in a sense in their treatment of women. Sisters in Christ, and that's been incredible. And I think a true unique aspect to it. The other thing I wanted to say to all of you is we all are very aware that there is a war on masculinity in our society. And I have always been so encouraged to look at this group, and even on the weekly roundtable meetings with the members, looking at the men in that group and just knowing like these are godly Christian men who are going to stand up against this war on masculinity. And I recently read something that said the reason they're coming for men and they are describing everything that's remotely masculine as toxic masculinity is because they know that if they can get the men fragile and out of the home or not guarding their family, then that leaves the rest of the family even more vulnerable. And then Satan just has his way with everyone at that point. And I know that the men in Idea Network are masculine men of God and worth following, worth submitting to, worthy of submission. And I just challenge you guys to continue that and to fight this war, because it's not something we can act like is not happening. You see it around you. I live in Portland. It's everywhere. You can't drive to Fred Meyer's without seeing it walking down the street. So it's a war that we have to be proactive about. And this group has always given me so much hope for the next generation. And I know you guys will continue in that fight. And I loved hearing a couple of you mentioned, like Adam Bray mentioning they want you guys want to start an idea night in your area, or maybe an idea day. Like, take it, run with it. We're not bashful to that by any means. start something in your area. Matt in Montana, like, do it. Don't like wait for us to take the lead because we're not here anymore. Like, go for it. And genuinely, I mean this with all my heart. A lot of you already have my cell phone number. If you have any questions about just like how this works, or like, where did we get our badges, or, you know, anything like that, I'll put my number in the chat for those of you who maybe don't have it, but please call me, or have whoever you're going to have run it call you. Because I understand a lot of you are visionaries and you're not necessarily wanting to run it behind the scenes yourself, and that's totally fine. And I pray God has matched you with an assistant or someone who can run the logistics for you so you can focus on the vision of it all. But have them call me. I'm so ready to just give away this knowledge or encouragement that I can. And if any of you are like that, please don't feel like you can't reach out or that I'm gatekeeping this. It's all yours. Just give me a call or a Facebook message. I love you all. And I have no doubt that our paths will cross in the future. And when they do, I really look forward to hugging some of you and shaking a lot of your hands. And I'm just excited to see where God is going to take you because of the foundation that was laid with Idea Network. Thanks.
James Kephart just said, Kylie has been the backbone of this network, and that is absolutely the case these last 5 years. Why don't we one more time just thank Kylie for all that she's done. We show you honor and love and great appreciation. Kylie, we do genuinely admire you. So the question is, what's next? And the answer to that question is, you are. We've spent a lot of time thinking and praying over this. You're next. That's the concept. When we started this in Las Vegas, we were just a couple of guys who decided to start it and invite their friends. You say, well, I'm just a guy, a couple of guys that we want to start something, then do it. You can. In fact, from this network, what's happened is we've noticed already ministries and networks and conferences and ideas and podcasts and blogs that have already been launching. And we want to highlight a few of those. But in a general sense, you might say, then who's going to do it? And the answer is, you are. More on that at the end. Demo day is something that I want to bring up. There's something that I'm going to be involved in the years to come. It's because of my position with ABWE. And if you've never been to a 24-hour demo at ABWE, it's one of the things that I do want to highlight and say, I'd encourage you to come and be a part of it. It's an opportunity for you to understand what it truly means to dive deeper inside of missions. For me, you say, what's one of the conferences that I'll be part of? That's one of them. But it's just one of the ministries that we've connected to through Idea Network. They've been apart for many, many years. Another one that is launching right directly out of the network itself is Ministry Books. Ministry Books is a ministry that Dan Murray has just started. And Dan is inside of the comments there. You can actually message him directly, or you can scan that QR code. And you can find out specifically what exactly Ministry Books is, because though it is a for-profit business, he's putting this is his entire full-time job. You might hire an outside designer, you might hire an outside consultant, but who does your books? The answer is it might be Dan Murray with Ministry Books. There's a podcast I want to point you to, and it's the Osterkamp's Family Meeting. If you haven't heard this hilarious and fun and relaxing meeting, you want the spirit of Idea Network to continue for you, you've got to download this podcast. Heather and I were just on the podcast ourselves, and we laughed halfway. We laughed pretty much through the entire thing with Thomas and Lysandra. They are a good family, but not a perfect family. They are a family following Jesus, but not a family without their faults. And that's what makes them so relatable and understandable. You got to download and understand and know this podcast. I want to point out also a ministry that has come out of Idea Network, and that is Dr. David Tice. He actually travels nearly full-time now for, well, not full-time.
About 24 weeks of the year.
24 weeks of the year. And he has availability starting next year. There's still a few slots open. And the way in which you're able to contact and book him is by the QR code right there. You can scan that QR code. That'll take you directly to his booker, his scheduler, which is Charity Tice, Charity Berkey, my sister. who schedules things for him. Dad's going to be speaking in just a moment, but we'll move on. I want to point out also the Men After God podcast. Dustin Alley has become one of the, not only members of the Idea Network, but one of the leaders in the Idea Network. He's become not only a friend, but I personally coached Dustin, I believe it was in the year of 2022, maybe 21. A great man, a great podcast, and it's going to be launching soon. And I want to encourage you to follow that podcast if you haven't already. It's going to be coming out Father's Day of 2023. I also want to mention a great opportunity for you to take advantage of one of the lawyers of the Idea Network. And when I say lawyers of the Idea Network, not that we've needed a bunch of lawyers, but Christian attorneys who have come and been part of us, not only Josh Hirschberger, of course, with his Citizens podcast, but also, you may not be aware, but Dustin Gaines, who spoke at many of our meetings, actually just launched his own law firm with 2 partners. It's a full service, client-centered, and cost-effective national law firm. And this is a man who specializes in church law. He's somebody that has been a friend of mine since college. He's somebody that has spoken at the ID Network events for many, many years. You've heard him on the podcast. I want to encourage you to check him out and check out his ministry, and see what his membership situation actually looks like. And you're going to be surprised how affordable and helpful that might be. Ladies, if you're not connected, if your husbands are, or husbands, if your wives are not connected to the EFW, I want to encourage you to check out that Facebook group now with tens of thousands of followers. I believe it might be into the hundreds of thousands of followers. I think it's
239,000.
So 239,000 followers on Facebook. Men, you can follow it too without your masculinity being questioned. Kylie already told us that we're masculine, so we're good. It's called Encouragement for Women Who've Been There. And
Women.
Encouragement from women.
Yes.
Who've been there.
You got to get it right, because it's from women. All sorts of different women contribute to this, and they are ladies who are in the ministry, who know what ministry is like, and can be a real encouragement to other ladies who are in ministry or out of ministry.
You got to check it out. It's of course a Facebook group, but it's also 240,000 people, 250,000 people, but also they published multiple books and devotionals for young women, for women, for teenage girls, and it's a great thing. One of the leaders of our network over the years has been Kurt Skelly. And Kurt Skelly, for those of you who don't know, does lead Land of the Bible tours. In fact, I was just talking with a friend of mine that's in the network who's going to be going with Kurt and a group to the Footsteps of Paul in October of 2024. I was invited to go. I'm not sure that I'll be able to, but it's a great opportunity. If you haven't taken a group to Israel, the great thing about going with Kurt is that you can go with 7 to 10 of your people in your church, even if it's a smaller church, and join a larger group with some people you can trust. And the spirit of Kurt is the spirit of Idea Network. You'll want to be a part of it, which leads me to In the Gospel. In the Gospel is one of the most relaxing, encouraging conferences you can be a part of. This, but if you've not been to an In the Gospel event, there's a refuel event that takes place in Orlando every year, and I want to encourage you to go. I went to the very first one. My plan is to go to another one in the future, and that is something you definitely want to look into. One of the partners over the years has been Church Answers. Church Answers is Tom Rainer and Sam Rainer's network, and when Sam and Tom found out that we were closing our network, they asked if they could present a 6-month membership free. This one's important to me because I know that some of you are specifically like, this is your network. And part of the pastoral heart that I've been struggling with is, what about those who don't have a place to go? I'm very clear on what God's leading me to do, but it does leave some without a place. And that made me look at Church Answers and their offer and realize this is a great option for some of you that might say, I'd really like that community. Where can I find that? Though Church Answers will be different than what you've experienced here, I would definitely encourage you to move in that direction. You know, if you're looking for a lady speaker, I would want to mention Lysandra Osterkamp. Lysandra is not only a great leader within our network, but a great speaker. We know you could even ask Heather in our local church, but Lysandra is wonderful. You would love to have her and be a part of your event. We would love for that as well. Lastly, I want to point out somebody who's been part of our network from the very beginning, and that is Ben Shetler. He leads the Center for Truth in Love. And this is a conference as well that I would definitely want to encourage you to participate in. Resources and the conference are available if you click on that QR code, scan that QR code. I think you're going to enjoy that conference. I believe it's going to be a blessing and a help to you. And it's definitely one of the places we want to encourage and direct people to. If you're in the Pacific Northwest, you need to know that there's actually an event that is going to be stemming from one of the Idea Days. In 2024, there were going to be 4 Idea Days that we had scheduled that we are canceling. One of those 4 events will continue, but not under the Idea Day Network banner. It's going to be called the PNW event, and it's going to be led by Dennis Fountain and about 8 other guys who approached me after they found out we were closing the network and saying, we still want to have this event. What are we going to do? To which I said, you should definitely have this event. And they're owning it and they're taking it forward, which leads. And so if you have not yet, contact Dennis Fountain and find out more about this event. I'm not sure if you can scan a QR code there, but Dennis himself, you've got his info. He'll put it in the chat and reach out, especially if you're the Pacific Northwest, or maybe you're up in Connecticut and you're like, I still want to go to an Idea Day. Probably the closest thing you're going to find is the PNW event. It's going to be taking place in early 2024. Now you might be saying, well, if it's not the PNW for me, what is it? Well, let me say this as I relate before I go to the next, and that is this. It's whatever you decide it to be. Meaning, spending a lot of time thinking through, who do we pass on the Idea Network to? The answer is all of you. You know, the one negative of taking the Idea Network or the Idea Day brand and giving it to one individual is that that person now has to determine what happens next with it. By sitting here stating to each and every one of you, do what Dennis Fountain is doing and create your own, it allows each and every one of you to take that baton and run in 100 different directions. The networks, the podcasts, the ministries, and the conferences, the Idea Days, the Idea Nights, and the Idea Summits that will flow from this into the future really have an opportunity of going into infinitum. Why? Because it's not just one group, one person, one name, one person holding that baton. It's you. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, there's no way that I can do that. And the answer to that question is yes, you can. In the same way we thought there was no way we could, you truly can. And we want to encourage you in that way. You know, the last person I want to point out is Yoder. Caleb Yoder is the designer of the Idea Network. And if you're interested in him designing for you, you can reach out to him. You know, Yoder is not only our designer at the Idea Network that closes out at the end of this month, but he's our designer at Southern Hills. He is our exclusive designer at our church here in Las Vegas. So if you like that social media content, his designs, I would encourage and point you in that direction. Well, I've taken a lot of time with a lot of those, and these might seem like advertisements, but they're not, because advertisements get payment. They are connections, ministries that are flown to and through and out of Idea Network. And I want to encourage you, please follow these awesome ministries. But the testimony time continues, and I'm going to flow over to AJ. AJ, share with us what God's put on your heart.
Well, I was going to say something to the effect that I have the best beard in the Idea Network now that Dale Curdy isn't here today. But then some guy named Logan Wolf decided to hop in. So thanks for that. But no, I came to the Idea Network through, I like to refer to it as the Holy Spirit in the United States Air Force. Your sister and brother-in-law moved down here and joined our church. And I'd heard of Idea Network was from Hope. And she said, hey, you know, my brother and my dad, they kind of put together this Idea Network. And so, you know, something maybe you guys be interested in checking out. So we went to Idea Night, I think it was 2021, and went over to Florida. And oh, good night of mercy, I'm blanking on the name right now, but West. I should have wrote it down. But anyways, over there. Oh man, that's going to drive me nuts. But anyways, went over there, had a great time, really enjoyed it, and got to meet a lot of those guys there. And then, of course, we heard about the Idea Network Charter Membership Summit in San Antonio. And so I'm a staff guy. I'm not a lead pastor, but my lead pastor, Mike Spann, was definitely interested in it. And so we're like, all right, let's go. So we have some good friends down there in San Antonio and got to go down there and meet. Man, I tell you what, it was great. I think we ran into Ryan Livingston first, and Thomas and Lysandra, and man, I tell you what, they made us feel at home. They really made us feel like family. They really did right off the bat. Got to meet Andrew Peters and a lot of those guys, Nick Carnes and some of them, and it felt like, they just felt like guys that I didn't go to college with these guys, but it was like, these are all guys that are on the same boat. They're all in the same, same goal, same ministry. And we just kind of picked up and got to know each other. And just through that, really it helped us to flow back into the roundtables and be able to share it. And I loved it. What I said, at the Idea Summit in Dallas is absolutely true. Everything that Idea Network deals with, man, it is exactly what we need, because we don't do it alone. We don't do ministry alone. We can't do it alone. And so we need support. One of the first ideas that stood out to me was, I think it was Stephen Miller who was speaking at the time. He talked about 8 weeks of follow-up, where you don't just follow up with people, when they come and visit. You don't just follow up for a week or two. You follow up for 8 weeks, because they've got stuff planned on their schedule, and you do that continuous follow-up so that to get them to come back to church, to get them plugged in that way. And so that was one of the things that was just like, it really helped me understand that, hey, I gotta think outside the box on a lot of these things. That there's an idea with assimilation in our church, and it's not easier and easier to reach people. It's harder and harder. But with the Idea Network, man, it helped us to change how we do things so that we are reaching more effectively and doing that better. Of course, I just wanted to say another one that stood out to me was Jason's that he did it in San Antonio on the psychology of perfectionism. That was a really great one for me that I just had. It really struck me. It's like, man, I'm not in control. I can't be, because I'm not God. And I love that thought process that went into that. And I just, I'm very thankful. I told you, I texted you, Josh, and said, I pray for all you guys. I really do. I've got you guys listed on my prayer list. I'll continue to pray for you all, even from this day forward. And you guys have been a great blessing to me. And if you guys ever need anything, you're down on the Gulf Coast, come see us.
Thank you, brother. Man, that's greatly appreciated. We're going to go to BMAC. Brian is here. I want to mention, Matt mentioned the 2024 Church Answers Conference with Brian Sams would be an amazing conference to go to as well. And I don't know if you saw it in the chat, but Ben Shetler with Truth and Love is offering an incredible offer, free for everybody here, the curriculum, the small group curriculum to the entire Idea Network. And you don't have to be a member of the Idea Network to have that. So go ahead and check it out at the Center for Truth and Love. Get yours free today. We're going to go over to the next individual that's on here, Heath.
Hey, so the first thing I wanted to just remind everybody about is if you decided to do anything with media in your church, just make sure that you don't show Peter Pan. So just a reminder on that one. Had to throw that in there, give everybody a good laugh here. But no, I wanted to give a shout out to Robbie Green for hosting the Idea Summit. One of my favorite memories, we actually were traveling through all the ice and everything to get to the summit from New Mexico. And we got in a little bit late just because of that, ended up having to take a bunch of back roads and stuff. And but one of the things I remember is that it was the first time for me personally being in a worship experience where I felt like I was actually really free to worship, and where I was a place where I was free to, to raise my hands, and really, really free to, throw my head back and cry out to God in worship. And at times it was that, and at times it was a head bowed, but it was the first time for me to experience that. And so that's one thing that I'll never forget, is the first time that I really felt that freedom in a worship experience. It's the first time I've ever been in a conference, and I think somebody mentioned it earlier, where I didn't feel like I had to explain myself to anybody. I didn't feel like I wasn't getting those questions. Well, how many of you guys running now? Nobody really cared. It was, hey, we're all, on the same team. We want to be a blessing. We don't really care, who you are or where you're from. We want to know you. We want to know how we can pray for you. I mentioned in the chat, but that opportunity to pray for those that you're struggling. I've never experienced something like that at a church conference before. It was very powerful, very moving. The other thing I wanted to highlight here in these next few moments is really just the people that I've been able to see. I don't know if he's still on here or not, but I've known Dennis Fountain since he was in Bible college, which was obviously many moons ago. But seeing guys like that I've looked up to for a long time, who have gone through some transitions, and have really come to a more balanced and biblical approach to ministry. And I've heard people say things about Dennis that come to find out weren't true, and to see how he handled that. And I've said this to Josh. I've said in meetings where people took a dig at the Idea Network, maybe not specifically, but I think we've all heard things like, bless God, we don't need any new ideas. And that's not what the Idea Network's all about. So they didn't even really understand what they were saying. But I've also seen the leadership, and I've told this to Josh personally, but I've always appreciated his spirit and the leadership of the Idea Network, and how they have responded to those critics, and to those that would try to discourage them. And they've always done so, whether it's in public or specifically through social media. They've always responded with a gracious and Christ-like spirit. And that's something that I have appreciated. And it's also something that I've tried to emulate as well. Coming from I call it the super fundy world, a super conservative background, and now where I have a more biblical, balanced approach, philosophically, methodology, while still being theologically sound. I think back to the Idea Summit, and I knew going into the summit that I was going to start losing friends simply by posting pictures from Idea Summit. But it was something that I chose to face head on, and Josh was a huge encouragement in that. And I posted a picture with Dr. Tony Evans, and within an hour, I had family members that were posting scripture verses about false prophets, and those having itching ears, and all that kind of stuff. And I just appreciate how I was able to say, what, if other people can be walk the same path that I'm walking, and respond with grace, respond with truth, and with a Christ-like spirit, so can I. And so that's something that I'll always be thankful for, is the leadership of the Idea Network, and being able to look and see how can I do ministry better? How can I respond to people better? And that's one of the things that I will always take with me and appreciate, and just thinking outside the box, but inside the book. And that's one of the things that I appreciate, and will continue to hopefully be able to perpetuate in the future. I know there's already been discussions in the Facebook group about, maybe some rogue Idea Network meetings happening, meetups and things of that nature. And so I would definitely be interested if you happen to have something like that. Let me know. Also looking at, hey, let's continue. Let's get maybe some regional Zoom meetings going, so we can continue to be an encouragement one to another. And but with that, I'll sign off here. But just a few things that came to mind, and definitely looking forward to keeping in touch with you all through the Facebook group, and looking forward to that as well.
I'd just like to say something based on what was just said. I love the Idea Network. I love the fact that we have grown in our understanding. Josh and I have talked about the fact that we did not realize the hurt and some of the feelings that other people in fundamentalism have gone through, some of the difficult times, not because of anything of our own. We just weren't part of the hypercritical things that took place in places that and the hurts. Being involved with Idea Network and meeting so many of you has opened my eyes to the reality of how much this kind of thing is needed. We need one another. And as you have just expressed, so many of you have expressed, this is our tribe. These are our people. You need to understand there's all sorts of other people out there that are looking for the same thing. And they're looking for you. And you're the one they need to see. There are people in your city, there are people in your state that are thinking, I had a guy say to me one time, he said, I was in Utah. And he said, I just sort of felt like a bunker mentality. I'm just hiding out, and anybody that came near, I'm shooting at because I know that all they're going to do is attack me. And there are people that are all over the place that need preachers, ministry, pastors' wives who need to know, hey, there's somebody that's going to totally and completely accept me for who I am. And that doesn't mean theologically compromising. It just means they need you. Just like we've needed Idea Network, they need you where you are. And that's why Josh is giving a thumbs up and saying, yeah, do it, do it, do it. Because all around you, there are people who need that encouragement. And you are the answer. You're the answer they need. And so be it and do it and invite me to it because, hey, that rhymes. I'm a poet and didn't know.
There it is. There it is.
We want to continue to be an encouragement. There are limitations, but man, let us know and man, just keep doing it because the longer I live, the more my eyes are open to the reality of those who need this and need you where you are.
I love it. Thank you, Dad, for sharing. There's a couple people that got kicked out simply because it went so long. So Michael Eaton, I think you were up next, and then BMAC, I think, if you're still wanting to speak in. Michael?
Yeah, my first event that I went to was Columbus at I never know how to say their name, Louis-Sos Church, however you want to say it. And I just remember being there, but I really want to talk about the Idea Summit really quick. Tony and Heath both mentioned the prayer time. And I remember when we were there and you had said, if there's any ministries or people are dealing with finances right now to stand up. And so I think that was back in February. And so a couple of years ago, we started a private school at our church. And there was some things happening in our local district. And through COVID, parents in our church didn't want to put their kids back in the district. So we decided to start a Christian school. And through that, at the beginning of last year, we bought property from another local church that was shutting down across town. And we were looking forward to building. We bought 8 acres and it had a smaller church building on it. And so we were going to sell our current property and move over there and build. Well, we had gotten to looking at how much it would cost to build a road and build all the buildings we would need. And it was a lot more than what we had thought it would be. And we tried to sell it and we had it on the market for a long time. And so much, so I don't think my pastor's on today, Chris, but up until now, he still hasn't gotten paid since about January. It's a tough thing. And, when we were at that conference was just kind of the start of it. And it was hard to stand up and to admit that we were having problems, but, having those people around us come and pray over us, and people have been texting saying, checking in, seeing how it's going. But I wanted to give good news. Starting in June, we have somebody that is leasing our property from us. So we had big goals for that property to continue to build our school and our church. And, but through all that, we're getting a big down payment. Chris is going to be able to get paid back what he's owed for the work he's done these last several months. And just the stress of it all has been unbearable. That through all this, buying a new property, we thought the church would grow, and it did the exact opposite. We have lost a lot of people in the last year since we bought this property. And so it's been really tough, but to see that God is still wanting to do something with us and through us, and the school is growing, the church is starting to grow again, and just being able to have somebody lease the property to give us some money and get that taken care of, where we're not under the stress of it. And I know if you still pray for Chris and Amanda Thorne, there's still a lot of stress and things happening, but to know that we have this happening is just a really big load off of our shoulders. And I just credit Idea Network with a lot of that. And just when I first came to Idea Network, I was, pretty quick after a divorce, couple of years, and growing up, divorce was the worst thing you could ever do. And so I didn't know what was going to happen with my life and ministry and things. Just be able to come into a place that others have said already, that's just accepting of who you are, where you're at, and want just to help you get to the next spot where you need to be. So I'm very thankful for this. I'm very thankful for the friendships that I have acquired from this network, and guys that I stay in contact with very regularly. Just a good encouragement, because we're out in the boondocks near the Metroplex, but far enough away where nobody's here. And it's just nice to have ministry friends that, aren't local, but can still gain encouragement and ideas from. So very thankful for what you guys have done for us.
Thanks, Michael. We love you too. BMAC in the house.
Hey, Josh. How are you, buddy? Love you, man. Seasons come and go, don't they? Can you hear me? Good. Yeah, I was just thinking back, man. I just had to hop on here and just, mention a couple of things. First of all, that first idea day, I don't think it was so much that we intentionally segregated the women. It's just that I know Heather had a lot to say and she wanted to encourage the ladies. And so we were just thinking that, maybe they would enjoy being around one another than around us old dudes. But anyway, that first idea day, you, Steve, Jason, and Fred, walking away from that first idea day ever, there's a saying, that goes, you don't remember people for what they know, you remember them for how they made you feel. And I think you guys just made me feel that the best days for the local church were still ahead of us. And that hasn't changed in 10 years. Even though I'm not in full-time vocational ministry right now, I just thank you for your welcoming spirit, your desire to be a friend to everyone, and even allowing former full-time pastors to stay in to stay in Facebook groups and to just be a part of that conversation. I just want to thank you for just that overall feeling that I've ever had when I thought about you is, wow, there's hope for the local church. And it's because of the gospel. It's because of the finished work of Christ. And it's because Jesus has, mobilized us to go. And that, yeah, we don't follow one personality or one celebrity. We follow Christ. And so we can, take this forward and take the spirit of what you, Steve, Fred, and Jason started so many years ago. So just thank you for that. Thank you for the feeling that you leave me with, just that there's hope and that the church, the future of the church is bright. Appreciate you, brother. Love you. Enjoy this next season.
Thanks, brother. Thank you, bro.
bless.
See you, buddy. Justin.
Yeah, so I just want to hit what a couple of guys have touched on, but probably my favorite memory, in addition, and I have a lot of good ones of actually being a part of the network, but my greatest memory is actually having the follow-up conversations with people that hate Josh Tice. When I thought, or people unsure, or people not knowing, or people having false ideas of what the Idea Network is, being able to sit with somebody and say, and to have this conversation, which I was never allowed to have before, but just to simply say, yeah, you may think he's a dirty, stinking liberal, but this is about ideas. And to actually see pastors think instead of just parrot. instead of just parrot conversations or parrot what they've heard, but to actually stop and think, you know, you can have an assimilation program and not be totally on the opposite team. You can have these great ideas and come from a theologically different persuasion just because you may not agree with one area, literally the 5% of disagreement, doesn't mean that you can't take a good idea and run with it. And I even look at beyond just what you have mentioned about what the follow-up things that have happened from the Idea Network. Most of independent fundamental Baptists has radically changed over this time. There are multiple different persuasions having conversations in and among their conferences about how to do ministry. Something I hadn't seen very much of, and especially not having seen it in leadership that wasn't running thousands of people. And so, man, I've seen some great conversations that have come out of the Idea Day Network that I wasn't expecting. When I got in, I loved being able to tell people that had no idea who you were, that you're not a terrible person. And that was awesome. And then I just have to mention one of my favorite memories was, I didn't get a chance to know Dr. Tice. Never heard his name. And I remember the first Idea Day I came to in Vegas. And Dr. Tice was one of those people that I just walked up to and said hi, started asking me a bunch of questions about our ministry, and then just started going around the room introducing me. And I remember sitting there and especially having heard his history and his perspective. And he probably shaped my mind on the idea of I am allowed to be friends with a whole host of different people. That just because there might be any disagreement doesn't mean there needs to be division. We can be silent on some areas and vocal on agreement. We can learn to work with people because that's all we have to work with. And he modeled that better than anybody. Even in this last Idea Day, sitting down and breaking out old school methodology on how to start a church, breaking out tracts and hitting 200 doors and things that is now considered a fresh perspective. That really was standard fare, but giving these kinds of ideas, he was someone who definitely helped me. But I will honestly say, probably the thing I will miss the most about Idea Day is the Tice family.
Thank you, Justin. Mike?
I appreciate a minute or two here. I just want to give credit where credit's due as someone who has been having conversations with guys who are trying to get efforts like this going for the past 25 years. And to see this actually come to fruition, to actually see a group coalesce around these principles and around this posture toward what it means to be independent Baptist, and what it does not mean, has been a beautiful thing to observe. And I'm certainly happy to have supported you personally and to done anything that I could do just in personal conversations with other pastors and stuff too, and even bringing my son to Vegas and telling him these are your people, these are your guys, these are who you need to learn from. And it's been interesting as someone who sort of got used early on to being on the edge of the inside of a lot of circles. Me personally, it's been interesting to watch just the sort of visceral reaction to this, to the end of whatever this is, because we this it turns out that this has been deeply needed by very many people, and for me personally, most of the ideas I was getting from other places already, but to make these friendships and to come alongside other guys who just wanted to know that they weren't alone, just wanted to know that they weren't going crazy for seeing their path a certain way. Again, it's just been a beautiful thing, and it feels weird that it feels weird that it's coming to an end. Because some of us have been rooting for something like this, like I said, for a really long time. So, I, David Brooks, the New York Times columnist, wrote an article on the idea of being on the edge of the inside, and I threw a link to it in the chat. It may be that God is calling some of us to be on the edge of the inside of groups that we had been part of, or that we are currently part of, that we're being called to bring a different perspective from someone who is sort of entrenched in the values that are seen as being integral to that particular group. So I would just encourage folks to check out that article and just kind of wrestle with those ideas, especially as we think about, some of the passion, I think, comes from the fact of some of us found a group that we could be on the inside of, that we felt like this was our tribe. We could be on the inside of it, and to whatever degree this is going away, God's calling us to something else. And so, just want to certainly offer my listening ear to those who are. I'm in Indianapolis, so happy to meet up with anyone, and so yeah, I want to say thanks to you, Josh, for your for the degree to which you took bullets for us as kind of the public face of this. And I personally am grateful that you a lot of again, over these past 25, 30 years that I've personally been in some of these conversations, we felt like in order to entertain some of these thought processes, we had to stop being independent Baptist. And it feels to me like you were someone who was willing to use your platform and your influence to say that those two did not have to be diametrically opposed to each other. And so for that, I will always be grateful to you and to your staff and to the people who supported you as you made this endeavor happen. And looking forward to what God's got on the other side of this.
We love the Redhead Rev, that's for sure. Thanks, Mike. Matt Lyon is a friend of mine for many years. Some of my favorite memories are late night conversations after idea days. What's up, Matt?
That's exactly what I was going to say. I did want to mention I live next door to Steve Miller. If you ever need to get in touch with him, I can run over and talk to him. The other one. But no, three memories that I have that are combined is the first time Josh and I had a conversation was with Brian Reese on a podcast. First time we ever talked, and we had a sharp disagreement, and I told you straight up you were wrong. Years later, turns out you were not wrong. I was wrong. Then the second time was the first idea day in Cincinnati at the Midwest one. And I don't remember what year it was. And I went there as skeptical as anyone, just sure that what you were doing was fake and wrong. And I don't think I missed another idea day after that for maybe 5, 6, 7 years, just until recently. And then the third thing was one of those late night dinners, which were absolutely the best part of the meeting for me. I was sitting across from you, Josh, next to Mike. Brian was there, other people were there. And I think Mike or Brian or somebody came up with the idea night idea. And I remember saying or thinking, this is a terrible idea. It'll never work. And I didn't say it out loud because I was trained. And the next thing you know, it takes off. It's a great thing. I ended up hosting one. Just this past year, Mike invited me to speak at one. And all through these things I've learned over the past 10 years to explore, to pursue, to admit that you don't know everything. And the freedom that Idea Day brought with it, that's what it was. It was the freedom to explore something new, and that there's people around you that weren't going to judge you, that weren't going to be harsh, and you are allowed to be wrong, and you're allowed to change later. And then you could come back and share that same friendship with the people that you disagreed with. And there's actually one more. We met at that brewery in Cincinnati where we weren't supposed to be. And you asked me, you said, tell me why I'm wrong on multiple elders. And you said it in a way where you were like, I don't agree with you, but let me hear what you have to say. And I told you why you were wrong. You still disagreed with me. And we had dinner and it just went on. And I feel like that was the spirit of Idea Day. And I know for me, it really helped me move forward. So anyway, I love you, Josh. Love everybody else who made this happen over the past decade, and look forward to see what's happening next.
Love you too, buddy. Mike Rowell is the founder of Idea Night. That idea came from him. We gave him no credit. This is our final moment to give him credit. So there it is.
Yep, there it is.
He is Idea Night idea guy. Ashley, we missed the beard.
Yes. Can you hear me okay? Okay. I've been bouncing around the random rooms at the Y for the last hour, trying to find a quiet spot. Yeah, the Beard and Chris were doing the coffee with a pastor today. So that's why they weren't able to make it on. But yeah, I just hung around this long because I just wanted to share my gratitude for what the Idea Network has meant to us as a church family and everything. And I remember Dale came probably to maybe like the second one that there was those first few years. He would literally fly out that morning, do Idea Day, and then fly back that night, like kind of an insanity thing. And then probably about a few years in is when I started to come and would come and spend the night at Zeb Greenfield, with Zeb and Leah there. And I was at one of the ones where the ladies were segregated. But I will say it was great because I got to meet Rachel Reed, and the things that she taught us in our little session there as far as decorating and doing big major projects has been something that has stuck with me, this entire time. So there was a benefit to that, but it was funny to like only have a half day and then go out to lunch and be like, oh, okay, this is all we're doing. But it was all good. It was all good. But really, we were able to come, and I just was thinking over the last week of all of the ideas that we have taken from, the Idea Network and everything and put into practice in our church. I just remember those first times going, you like leave and your mind is just racing because you're like, okay, what do we even start to implement first? There's just so many things. But things like our foundation classes, that came from Idea Network. I remember sitting in on a small group chat, Roundtable, and Dennis Wilkening, who was over in Spokane, to Raiden Washington here with us, talked about their transition, and the things that he said, were things that we implemented when trying to transition into small groups. I remember sitting in on, I believe it was Zeb and Steven, when you guys did that big group session about leading up. That was something that stuck out to me and that we needed at that time, because we were about to go into a season with a pastor that, we needed to learn how to respectfully lead up and step into those roles. And of course, that season brought about its own bit of things that, that's how Chris ended up, coming, to our church. And then after that other pastor left is when we really utilized the Idea Network. I remember the first time, as Chris got voted in as the, whatever it's called, the temporary pastor and ever. And when he mentioned that December about going to the Idea Summit, I was like, wait, what? Like, we get to go back again? Because there was that period of time that we weren't allowed to go. And it was just like, I was so excited. I was like booking tickets that first night. I could not believe we were going to go back, and then coming back and seeing what, the Lord had in store for our church through the different relationships and the different, all the different things that the Idea Network, began to be for Dale and Chris at that time, when they didn't have a senior, over them. They didn't have someone investing in them or teaching them. And the Idea Network became that, for them, just this, group of pastors getting to just feed into them individually. And it was just, there's so much that the Idea Network has been for us. Love the relationships that it has given us, getting to meet Dennis Fountain, and then get to meet him in person. And then even just sending one of my very best friends that moved away from our church, knowing that she was going, that they were going to get plugged into Dennis Fountain's church. That was so reassuring to have that. Getting to meet Kylie and just dreaming about the wonderful job that she had and wishing. I was like, man, I just watched her all the time. I was like, that is a dream job. Like that, she got to do so much fun stuff. And I know, but I also know the work and nitty gritty that she was seeing behind the scenes too. The Oscar camps, then getting them to come and visit Washington afterwards. Like there's just so many connections that the Idea Network and Idea Summit. I am super, super sad. My one negative in all of this is like, it would have been really nice to know that that was the last summit before it was the last summit. Like I would have done a lot more begging to come this past January. I was looking at tickets the week before, okay, if no one else on our team is going, I'm still gonna go. But after seeing that it was an ice storm, I realized, okay, that's why I wasn't supposed to go. But just wanted to say thank you. You guys have been a part of our ministry and just all the different places, and pastors that have now fed into our ministry. Just one more thought is just also seeing the humility and the leadership. Getting to see, knowing my husband, if you guys know him, he is the winner of the beard contest. He just has an amazing beard. And just knowing that he's a quiet person, but then, I remember going to conferences with him and Josh Rumler's up on stage talking to someone and a full-on conversation. And, we're getting ready to leave. And Josh lightly ends that conversation to chase Dale down to say hello to him. And I was just you don't see that everywhere. And, one other connection too was just a blessing was whenever we did go through that really hard season of being under a very hard leadership. Dennis Bokening, who was at a lot of the Idea Network things, he knew what we were going through because we're best friends with his youth pastor. And he and his church sponsored me to come to the Idea Network, the Idea Summit that year, because they knew what an encouragement it would be to me and, to our family. And that just shows, the encouragement and the reputation that the Idea Summits and Idea Network had was, you would go there and get refreshed. And so I'm just really thankful for the time that everyone has put into this, the leading, the following of the Lord's leading in each of these areas, and just giving us this place to grow and to learn. And, it was what we needed for this season. And I'm so glad that you guys put the time into doing this for us.
Thank you for sharing that, Ashley. That was a blessing just to hear. Ben Shetler.
Probably should unmute here. Hey, Josh, man, it's so good to see you. Wow. I just wanted to say thank you so much over the years, as everyone else has said. I was thinking of my favorite Idea Day moment was exactly what a lot of people have said, is when I was in the one at Tony's church, and he's in Columbus, and I'd never been to one, and Josh asked me to give a keynote, and he's like, we don't give keynotes, but go ahead, which is classic Josh. And the year before, we had done a conference in, I forget where it was at. And the year before that, we'd done one, and we'd put a bunch of churches together. And I was working with so many churches that wouldn't get, well, we're not going if this church doesn't go, and we're not going if they don't go, and we don't like them. And it was like all of this. And I'm like, oh man, this is exhausting. And I come here and I'm like, these people, these guys are awesome. This is my group. These guys love the Lord. They love the Bible, and they're not tied down with, oh, well, this person's doing this, so I'm not going to talk to them. It was awesome. And so I want to say thank you. And then there's another side of this too, right? So I spoke at an SBC event a little while ago, and it was pastors, and the only way you could come to the event is if you had 3,000 attending every Sunday or more. And so I asked them, well, what do you do if a guy came in the past and he wants to come, but their attendance dropped? And I remember the person leading the event, he goes, oh yeah, that's a really awkward conversation. And they uninvite them. And I was like, oh my goodness. And like you see at Idea Day, you see some people like Robbie Green who have what he calls a mini mega church. And then you see them sitting right next to people who, some have been on here and said, man, my church isn't big, but this has been a big help to me. And I just feel like, wow, that is a really cool thing. That it's just like, hey, we're all here and we want to serve the Lord and we're not angry and we want to equip people. And I've been praying and I've, I know how busy you are, but I'd love to talk with you about some ways that the Center for Truth and Love could continue to help people in the network. And so we started a conference a while ago for pastors. And I would be honored if some of you would take the time to check that out. And it may not be for you, but it's a lot of some of the spirit. And I think I want to get your permission first, Josh, but I feel like there were so many good things done in Idea Day. I'd like to try a few of those at Future Church. And okay, so Josh is giving the green light, and Josh is also speaking at it too, which is really great. No, but we'll see about stuff like that. We've got George Barna, who is speaking at the next one, which I'm excited about. And so if people would be willing to even give that a try, maybe that's this coming January. And then we're giving our Truth and Love resource to anyone that wants it. It's our #1 selling resource. And if we're just doing it one day, but like if you want it and you're depressed, well, at least there's a free resource for you. And so if that could be a help. And I want to say thank you to all the friends that I made here. And everyone else has said it, so I don't want to repeat it. But Josh, I appreciate you so much. And this network has meant so much to me in terms of a place to belong. And so thank you very much, Josh.
We love you, Ben. Isaac.
All right. Well, I just wanted to say that I'm kind of newer to the Idea Network. Wish I had joined it earlier, but joined it when I was kind of going through a hard time, and it was really an encouragement and blessing to me. I appreciate the positive spirit, like other people have mentioned. I was down there in Dallas, with the ICE summit, and the worship there was really, really a blessing to me. And I was kind of going through a hard time, and just having people to pray for me really was a blessing. And Josh, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me and making me feel welcome. So thank you.
I remember that moment, Isaac. It was a real moment with the Lord, and I enjoyed praying with you that day. Joseph.
I just want to say thank you so much for the network. Followed you all for a long time, and got to go to the first event my wife and I got to go to was over in the city I can't pronounce, over near Tampa, and that was last year. It was an Idea Day, and it was the moment when we walked in that we knew we were in a transition. We weren't sure what to do. God had been laying some things on our hearts. And it was truly confirmation that we had found exactly what we'd always been looking for, with the ability to ask questions without even the hint of being rejected in any way, shape, or form. Being able to have honest conversations that are real and authentic and can share your heart, and having people being willing to rally around you. I met Thomas over there last year, and that's been a fantastic friendship, and it's just I look forward to the future with that. I have to say, my family getting to go to Summit earlier this year was and has been the highlight of the year so far. Has opened up a lot of different avenues that we didn't expect. Even if we did expect to go to Dallas and have the same kind of weather as Florida, although it was icy, it really didn't matter. We enjoyed the spirit. I'll not forget the first night when we pulled in and the music started and the worship started, and it was just amazing. That's not a good enough word for it, but it was amazing. And then sitting around and talking with everybody, and having conversations and people to pray for us. And as we continue our church plant over here, and people just reaching out, it's just been phenomenal. And I look forward. I'm thankful that the Facebook group is going to stay open, and stuff. And I have to say as well, thinking about it, it was for our family in January and February. It was a lot of things going on in our home, and God really showed up in our home, in our family, through the summit and through the youth events. My son, my middle son, got up a few weeks ago and spoke in front of a church, and scared to death, but he did it, and he was asked to do it for them. And so having that moment when he was willing to do it, and just see him kind of growing into the Lord now is just amazing. And I'm just thankful for the network and the ability to be able to have the honest conversations, to challenge my thinking, and in some cases confirm what, as I read the scriptures, confirm that, oh, I'm not crazy at times. And I know my wife is the same way. She feels that it life-changing on all levels, and we're going to miss it. And we love you and your family, and are so thankful for the fact that you at one point sat down and had an idea to have an idea network. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Joseph. Matt?
Hey, guys. Hey, I just want to say a quick word of encouragement for those who I know so many people have found value in this network for many reasons, but one of the main reasons for so many was for people who came like me from the independent Baptist movement and had that background, and philosophically, theologically, whatever it was, realized there wasn't an alignment. And so they found that, well, here's a group of people. I mean, everything you were just, the last person was just mentioning it. We've heard it over and over. I've found a network where I'm able to share and speak and think outside the box. I think the unspoken part of this, though, that I want to address, just for anyone out there that is in that place right now, that they're like in that independent Baptist no man's land, like, hey, I'm not that, but I don't know where else to go. I don't know what else there is. And the Idea Network was that for you. And there's that feeling of I don't know who to trust. And I think some of that comes from this idea that from the independent Baptist movement of, here are the few colleges that you have to go to. And if you don't go, if really we can't trust anyone outside. I had a pastor tell me that a few years ago when I was thinking of going to a Southern Baptist seminary. And they said, well, if it were me, if I'm having a missionary or church planner come over asking for support, if they don't go to one of these schools, I'm just not going to consider them because I don't trust it. And so I think the unspoken value for the network for so many is like, well, Josh went to one of those schools, or other people in this network went to one of those schools. And it's like, we can't trust anyone else. And I just want to speak a word of encouragement, just to break free from that mindset that there's just so, as Josh has said, there's so many other great networks, groups out there. There's so many that you mentioned today of people within the network, but there's so much else out there as well. And just not to be afraid of what else is out there. Not everything out there is good, but there is a lot out there. I've just discovered the evangelical world at large is very big and very welcoming. If you think that this network, what it has is special, you're right, it is. But if you think there's nothing else like this out there, that's wrong. There's a lot of groups out there that are welcoming as well and open to ideas and not cliquish. And I just want to mention that I know from some of the comments, even on the Facebook group, and people, if you're in despair, and some people have felt like, well, man, Josh is like abandoning us right now. Like we need this. But I really think by closing this network, Josh is actually pointing the way forward still for those who are found themselves in that IFB no man's land. He's showing us that while the network was great, it was unique, it was special, there's a lot else out there. And so Josh, thank you for pointing the way in that sense for us.
Thank you, Matt, for sharing that. You know, I've always respected and love you and your wife tremendously. One of my mentors, one of your friends, for many years said this statement as it relates to what next. He said, you've got a brain and a Bible. Use it. That's all you need. Matt's right. There's a lot of great stuff in what we call the Christian family and the family of God and the church worldwide. There's a lot of great networks. You got a brain, you got a Bible, you don't need anybody else's permission, not even mine, not even nobody's. Find it. And when you find it, let me know where you're going. Invite me. Another thing that's often said is this.
Not only find it, be it.
Be it. Start it. So I heard somebody say one time, when there's nothing else to say nothing else. So at this time, we're going to have Dad close in prayer, and we're going to close out the day.
Let me just say again, thank you for all of you. We're just thankful that we have had the opportunity, and we still have the opportunity of enjoying one another and fellowshipping with one another. And you can contact us anytime. We love you, and we'll be praying for you.
Amen.
Father, thank you for your goodness. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for fellowship. Thank you for brothers and sisters. Thank you that when we got saved, we were born again into your family, and we have all sorts of brothers and sisters all over this world. And Father, you are moving your family forward. And this is a forward move, not a backward move. And I pray, Father, that you'll just impress that on each of our hearts. And may we go forward. May we just be what you want us to be. And may we represent you wherever we go, in all that we do and say. And we ask this in your name, that you might be glorified through each of us and through every group that we influence. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.